joining today to discuss from prototype to product, go-to-market strategies for scalable solutions. So what does this actually mean? What are we going to be talking about today? So really looking at having user-centric go-to-market strategies, specifically as it relates to new market entry or looking at new industries, in the case I'm going to walk you through today, seeing how you can apply product frameworks specifically to go to market, what this actually looks like in action. Generally, as you enter a new market, there are going to be kind of new use cases that you uncover. So what should you be prototyping? What should you be saying yes to? What should you be saying no to? And for the options or the prototypes that you say yes to, what does it actually look like to really take that to market and scale it out for prolonged success? So a bit about me. My name is Jenn Cunningham. I am the Senior Manager of Strategic Product Marketing for a company called PolyAI. PolyAI automates customer service over the phone for some of the world's largest enterprises. So if you have called up a restaurant to make a booking or a hotel to get a pillow sent up to your room, or if you have called a medical practice to make a booking, which is what I'm going to be talking to you about today, high chance you've been talking to one of our bots. We automate millions of conversations every single day, or millions of customer service conversations every single day. But that being said, the opinions I'm sharing with you are very much my own. I'm not speaking as a representative of PolyAI. I'm speaking as someone who has nearly 10 years of experience in process automation technology, working across product management, implementation consulting. Recently at Poly, I moved into product marketing from go-to-market alliances. So we'll be kind of taking a broader lens of how all of these experiences come together to create new market entry strategies and solutions. So really excited to chat with you today. Now, I think really, if we're starting at the core of go-to-market and looking at kind of meaningful market entry, if you aren't centering your core user needs, you're not going to be set up for success. If we're thinking about sales, product, and marketing, everyone is interacting with your users in a different way. Sales is looking to get deals done, right? Your product team is looking to innovate thoughtfully for your user base. And your marketing team is looking at broad-based marketing, is looking at the right messaging and the right cadence to really connect to the right customers. And in an ideal world, all three of these teams will really be in lockstep. But I think we really need to be careful when we're looking at new market entry and kind of innovating for new market entry. A sales-driven innovation is, I think of when you have someone from the sales team who says, I have this opportunity, so we need to build this for the whole company, right? You may not necessarily need to do that, or not necessarily something you should be thinking of, I think, from a full go-to-market standpoint, because that's not necessarily representative of the whole market. That is a decision and discussion to be had from the sales team with the engineering team on, are you building this for this specific deal? Also, you think of your tech-driven innovations, where you're innovating for the sake of innovating, which I think can be great, but especially if you're looking at a team that's growing quite rapidly or a company that's growing quite rapidly and you have limited resources and you're looking to scale effectively, may not always be the best fit. So actually something I always think of when we're looking at tech-driven innovations is back when I was a product manager for an advertising conglomerate. I was working on an internal platform that looked at like customer insights, data insights, market insights broadly. And it was used by internal users within the organizations. We were shipping out very bespoke versions of this product every couple of months for a new user group. And so we had a little extra capacity in a sprint, and an engineer was saying, hey, I think it would be great if we use this capacity to stand up an Epic for full accessibility for everyone with kind of different disabilities, so everyone could be able to access the platform, which I think is great, but had to remember, this is a B2B platform. We actually know our users. We didn't have any needs at the time for anyone who needed assistance in terms of visual aids or things like that. So really great idea, really, really helpful innovation, but maybe not the right fit necessarily for the users of that specific product. Now let's look at market-driven innovations, right? Who's the core user of this product? Who is the buyer, right? Because the buyer may not necessarily be the person who is using the product. What are they using today, and where are they finding out about new solutions? These are 4 really simple questions. And I think if your go-to-market strategy and your go-to-market motion at your organization is really well-formed and well-aligned, sales, product, and marketing should have relatively similar, if not very similar, identical answers to those 4 questions, because it means you are all understanding your users' needs at its core in a relevant way, relevant for your organization, and enabling you to scale. So I think when we're thinking about this, oftentimes I think go-to-market, it can be thought out as, just send some messaging, just get this done. But I think actually taking that product-centric approach, what is the problem we're trying to solve for, and applying it to go-to-market can be really critical and really valuable here. So this is a very simple product framework. You may have used it before. Understand, identify, and execute. So understanding, what is your goal and why does it matter? What is your mission? Who are the key people that you need to kind of reach to achieve this goal? Identify, where are the best opportunities to execute, right? And then actually executing, right? I think build, test, repeat, and iterating from a product sense. What does this actually look like from go-to-market? So I'm giving you an example from US healthcare. So early on, back when Poly was at Series A, they're now Series C. So this was a long time ago. We were trying to get some initial market traction in the US healthcare market, and I was specifically looking at partnerships for kind of joint go-to-market offerings. And so I actually completely failed when I first did this. Because Poly was really successful in the restaurant space. We thought restaurant bookings were the same as healthcare bookings. We'll just say we can book a bunch of appointments in and people will be interested. And that didn't work. So I took a step back, did a lot of market research since we didn't have any existing kind of customers to go to for feedback, right? So did a lot of market research, expert interviews, attended events, just talked to a bunch of people, and was able to really populate and think about this in a more thoughtful way. So what's the mission? So the mission that I'm going to be talking you through today as well for this conversation is, what is the mission? Expanding to US healthcare. We found that the core buyer, contact center, or core user is going to be in the contact center, but really the buyer, you have C-suite, but also patient experience. That was a side of the market that we hadn't really been thinking about before. But then also identifying every single expert interview we had. The HIMSS conference came up. That's like the industry conference in the US. Everyone was saying, are you going to be at HIMSS? Want to talk to you at HIMSS? What are we doing? And then also some net new use cases came up as well that I'll be walking you through next as we're thinking about what to prototype. Then from a design standpoint, how are we revising our messaging from this patient experience standpoint? The metric we're looking for is just to increase the number of initial sales meetings in healthcare. And then execution, it's really just iterating on messaging, reaching out, seeing what you can kind of do and deliver in this instance. So prototypes, let's get to the heart of it. So as I mentioned, as we were looking at new market entry, we were looking at kind of new ways to go to market with new partners. We found 3 different kind of net new use cases that we thought were really interesting and wanted to kind of see what would make sense to put into practice. So these are the 3 kind of instances that we have. So voice AI, how are we automating conversations in a given space? So the first one I have is outbound patient monitoring. So this was there's a potential partner. They were working in the mental health space, looking at running outbound screening questionnaires for patients who were recently discharged from the hospital. Generally, call centers here would be really overwhelmed. You would have case managers just calling patient after patient after patient, trying to get patient notes, making sure that people were okay. And if they weren't okay, how do we get them the help that they need? So really critical use case. We already knew as an organization that could handle outbound calling, obviously could handle the specific scripts, and provide really empathetic responses. But again, this was kind of an idea, right? It was a brainchild, unclear buyer. Also from a behavior standpoint, people talk to robots differently than they talk to people. And so while you may be willing to engage with a person on the phone for 10 minutes, even if you're opting in to be contacted at a given time, we find that over time, when you're talking to a robot, your responses get shorter and shorter and shorter. So would people actually want to be able to stay on the phone for that long was also a question. Second use case we came across, outbound scheduling. So outbound calls, like robocalling basically to hospitals to make appointments for patients. So this was for a patient scheduling company where they would have practices listed on their website. They wanted to people to be able to press a button, call that practice without actually interacting with anyone, and be able to then make that booking without ever having to pick up the phone. Knew we could handle outbound calling, knew we could handle appointments. However, when you're looking at outbound calling and you're looking at navigating call trees, even with Gen AI technology, which gives you much more flexibility in terms of responses, a lot of concerns in terms of how do we test this, right? In terms of looking for consistency. Anytime you're testing conversational software, at some point you do have to go live, because you never know how people, well, you always have to go live, but in order to really test it effectively, you have to put it in the wild and see how people talk to it. And so tricky to kind of test and understand how to scale. And then the last one I have is complex bargaining. So this was another potential partner of ours. They were really impressed with the work that we were doing in restaurants, but they thought that the existing offering that we had wasn't really robust enough for the use cases that their practices were asking them for. So we're asking to kind of amp up our mechanism, leveraging Gen AI, to create really complex appointment scheduling. So looking at longer time frames, back and forth, being able to really negotiate to find a good time spot. Knew we had the scheduling capabilities, again, could follow that script to make sure that you're capturing all of the right information. And again, empathetic responses. It can be really stressful to try and book an appointment if you can't get seen. So being able to make sure people feel heard is really critical. However, what they were looking for was really going to require a significant amount of work on our infrastructure as an organization to support. Again, this was back at Series A, not necessarily indicative of where the company is now. So what did we say yes to? What did we say no to? So if we think back to those 4 questions that I started, who's your user, who's your buyer, both for outbound patient monitoring and outbound scheduling use cases, the buyers themselves were really unclear. So when we think of a partnership perspective, partners interested in potentially selling it, but as they were going to market, as they're talking to their users, right, they weren't getting a lot of strong feedback. So for the outbound patient monitoring, we did actually prototype this. We built this. It was straightforward enough that I was basically acting as the product manager with a solutions consultant, standing up this use case. We built a bot that you could talk to for like 7 or 8 minutes. And it was pretty solid, but then we actually took it to market and people just weren't keen. I think there is an additional kind of level of human support that people still seek out, specifically when it comes to healthcare. And so even if you have a bot that sounds very human-like, at the end of the day, people wanted to keep case managers on the phone, even if they were overloaded, just wanted to hire more people. Now to outbound scheduling. So this was one we actually never even prototyped, because the complex call trees would make it really hard to standardize, right? And so what are you even prototyping? I guess you would be prototyping that you could navigate a million different call trees, but not necessarily knowing who would be the person to buy that and who would be interested in it. And so we opted to step away. Again, just as you're looking as a scaling company, you have to be really mindful of your resources. And with an unclear buyer, the level of effort required to build this and test this just seemed too high. So what we did choose is this complex scheduling bargaining mechanism. It took a lot of work, right? It was a lot of work, but there was a clear buyer. So what did this actually look like from prototyping to a product, right? So how are we taking this as an idea that is coming up as our own market feedback, and then pulling this into production and also selling it and scaling this? So since this was really complex, this was coded outside of our core platform. So again, kind of I was standing up our use case, working with our engineering team, saying, okay, what are our infrastructure requirements here to actually need to be able to stand this up? We didn't even put this in the platform. This was separate code. Tested on really basic scheduling data. If you have done any research on US healthcare, the schedules can get really messy and really complex. Different doctors at different offices on different days, different availabilities. These were really kind of straightforward schedules, and obviously no live customers. Like I said, you never know what people are gonna say, but this is just us testing, running some different scripts, seeing, does this work? And it did, and it was really good and really successful. So ultimately did embed this as a net new feature into our platform, and an offering to be able to kind of expand our bargaining capabilities to find appointment time slots. And we were able to deploy on one new customer. And again, it's challenging. The challenge with healthcare scheduling too is, from a bargaining standpoint, being able to say, hey, I can only do Friday mornings. Give me every Friday morning appointment you have over the next 3 months. That's very different than, hey, I need to book a table at a restaurant tomorrow for my friends. And so being able to have that robustness embedded into our platform, we were able to deploy with the customer, and it went really well. It was very successful. So we actually incorporated this into our messaging and sales enablement materials, and we're able to go live with multiple customers, not just the one. And so what's really fun about this, though, is then we were able to also migrate some of our existing customers over. I think, as I mentioned before, we've done a lot of restaurant bookings, which are more simplistic use cases. However, we saw that this feature could be really valuable. So we ended up migrating some of our restaurants over to kind of the new, more complex bargaining functionality that we had. And previously, if you could book a table, at a restaurant, so someone calls up, hey, I'm free at 7 p.m. on Thursday. If the restaurant had availability at 7 p.m., you would see around a 60% success rate in booking. By adding in this new complex bargaining mechanism, that's actually increased up to 90%, which is pretty crazy. I'm really exciting. So this went from just being an idea to actually being something, not just one that people buy, but two that actually made our own deployments more successful. So what should you be looking for as you're looking at different prototypes? What are you ready to scale for? So one, do you have an interested buyer, right? More than one person needs to be asking for this. Don't just build because someone has an idea. But two, also think of that receptiveness to messaging. New prospects are also interested. So if you think again to your sales, your product, your marketing, from a sales side of things, if you are not on the sales team yourself, if you have an idea for a prototype, if you mention this to your prospects, or you're listening into your sales meetings, if you have kind of pre-recorded sales calls or recorded sales calls, any things like that, what are people asking for? What are people looking for? Seeing that new people are also interested, right? And then also less customization required for more deals. More complex scheduling mechanisms from our side meant that we would be able to handle more complex and more robust scheduling overall across industries, which also means that then there are analogous use cases within the existing customer base that can benefit from this innovation, which is really great. So a couple lessons learned here. One, target your whole market, not just your individual opportunities. Two, know your buyer, know how to talk to them. Make sure that you are using messaging that resonates, right? Test different messaging, try it out, see what gets people excited. Also, even in earlier company stages, even if you're still just looking to get initial traction, know when to walk away from the wrong opportunity. Don't waste a ton of time building something, getting yourself into a bunch of tech that people don't want to buy. It's okay to walk away, focus on something else. And then also, if you focus on something new and it gets a lot of traction, how can you apply this functionality to your existing customers to get better results, right? Where are your opportunities to go from 60 to 90% success rate amongst your existing customers when you're innovating in a new market? I hope this was really helpful. Thank you so much for your time.